Identification and authentication, IA. When we talk about IA, you've got to have your policies, and then you can say what kind you're using, and they're saying multi-factor authentication is a must be implemented, not should, not will be, but must. And that's saying that anytime somebody's accessing privileged account and replay resistant authentication, in other words, they can't use the same multi-factor authentication over and over again all throughout the day or week or month or year, heaven forbid. The point is you have to use multi-factor authentication, and you have to use it over and over individually or uniquely each time. And when we look at this, two forms of verification, such as password combined with security token, smartphone app, or biometric data. So could you use your own device for this piece of the key? And the answer is yes, because you're not actually containing the CJIS data, you're looking for a part of the multi-factor. So this is one of those areas. Now, you also have to get people to agree to allow you to use their own devices as part of this multi-factor piece, or you give them access using a security token, like an RSA device, etc., or biometrics. I did get in trouble with the sheriff one time, said, I'm going to shoot you if you make me change my password again. I'm like, well, sir, you're going to have to change your password, or put your gun down, we can go to biometrics. And then you just got to be you all day long. And you can't access it if you aren't you, which means you can't share that. And so it's really important that you have that and you build a policy around it. So your IA policy, identification and authentication, and procedures must be able to be uniquely identify and authenticate agency managed devices and understand what those devices are before they get access, right? So you can't plug in a new device and expect it to work on this to get CJIS access. Even with multi-factor, it has to be pre-authenticated, pre-set up, and hopefully establishing pre-shared secrets, right? Keys, etc., so that we can then authorize the proper way. And only approved devices, right? We can't just use anything anymore. We can't use, heaven forbid, a Chinese-made camera that came pre-hacked from China into the CJIS network just because it's in the same room, right? We have to make sure that we're not doing that anymore. Not that we ever would, right? So the point is really understanding that. And then reuse of individual system identifier, usernames or system accounts assigned to individuals should be limited to 1 year. That's new. So if you've been on it for a year, you're going to have to reset after a year. Well, they're also saying that you can't reuse that name. So stop adding 1, 2, 3, 4 to the back of it and make it truly unique, right? So we get beyond those kind of credential stuffing capabilities that the bad guys want, right? We don't make it easy for them. Agencies must manage these identifiers by uniquely identifying each individual, right, and making sure that they are identified as an agency or non-agency, right, vendor, etc., and make sure that we go through that process so that you can easily identify it and later on, limit access based on the fact that they're working for a company that had a CJIS issue, etc. So you really have to step up. Now, authenticator management. If we do not manage those keys, if we do not protect the actual authentication or the authenticators themselves, we can get into a lot of trouble. And so here, what they're really trying to do is make sure you're verifying that person is who they say they are. Then we're ensuring that an authenticator is strong enough to not be hacked, right? So that has to be built in. So when we talk about this, they really talk about the authenticator assurance level 2 or higher, which is part of the FIPS. When you talk about FIPS 140, this is, FIPS is designed by the federal government to give them secure access. And we're talking about level 1 and then following these CJIS policy guidelines on top of all those things. The honest answer here is we're trying to make it very difficult for the actual keys, the mechanisms we're using and the multi-factor, et cetera, to be hacked before it's even used or as it's being used. And so we're really making sure we have that, we understand it, and that we're changing those authenticators and group and adding in responsible roles so that we can take out areas if need be or limit access or lock them out briefly so that we can make sure that they aren't compromised before we move forward. So there's really a lot here, this goes breadth as well as deep. So we need to make sure we understand these requirements on the authenticator piece because this is all new, taking it to this level, something they didn't do before. And I really felt they were compelled to. And then as we talk about the actual pieces, the key part here on the new side, session binding. That means is that once we've established a secure communication, we have to maintain that communication in such a way that a man in the middle can't get in between, right? And we would notice if they did. So that's really what the security measures are. We talk about session integrity. Once that channel has been established and we've set up a secure channel, we cannot in any way degrade the encryption or go to a lower level to add in easier communication. I once was on a board meeting where we were talking about what to do if communications were halted because of our encryption. And one person says, oh, just get rid of the encryption. I'm like, no, we can't. Because that'll be the moment that the bad guys are listening. That's what they're waiting for, is that one moment. So really here, when we talk about session integrity, we're talking about maintaining the level of encryption throughout the session. And the session just means once we started that stream, that communication between the two. And then we can use tokens, but the tokens themselves must be secure. They must be used once. We have to talk about some more of those details so we really get there. And as we talk about the key management of the tokens, for example, not only do they have to have that secret authenticator, they also have to be able to be verified by looking it up. We have to have out of band, because what if they're offline, right? So we have to find other ways, and these are device-specific chips or methodologies that are embedded in the device, the radios, for example, that we're using to access the vehicles that are opening to CJIS data, right? So we have to take in all of that. When we talk about OTP or one-time passwords, we want to make sure that those are used just once and that they're properly of the proper size and credentials, so that even those one-time passwords need to be set up correctly and then verified. And when we talk about cryptographic, and one of the things we've been focusing in on is a cryptographic module. Why? Because this is a big thing coming, right? When we talk about quantum encryption or quantum computers, they will be attacking our encryption, right? That's their focus. So we really want to make sure that when we're using, including single and multi-factor cryptographic authenticators on both hardware and software, we're supposed to be doing this. We also want to make sure they're strong, right? Set up right. The key length is long enough, those kind of things. And that also means that we also have to use public key authentication, which means we'll also have a private key, hopefully pre-embedded in the device so that we can just plug it in and it works because it's working from the private to public key exchange. Basically, these are all the methodologies of making sure the keys themselves are secure. And so that's by definition what we have to do here. I know it went into the weeds a bit, but this is where we fall down. This is where people make mistakes or don't understand. And so there's a lot more information to be had and more in-depth learning to be around that. Do not feel overwhelmed